That's the reason that as an assistant manager, when I became training, that was one of the things that said, I'm going to teach you how to do things. I'm going to teach you how to run a power system. I'm going to teach you how to run generators. How do you put them on? How do they work? We taught them, those system operators, we taught them all of that. I talking about I helped build those gas turbines, how they work. What is the systems that make it work? So that when you get into an emergency and the plant calls in and says, we're in an emergency, something happened, you can query him and know what's happening to take the appropriate response. Because when I was an assistant manager and went to the operations center one time, I saw what happened when an operator panicked. We didn't have very good tie lines to to Georgia. At that time, it was before the 500 kV lines were built, and we only had one 230 kV line going across the border. And it had only had the capability of like 200 megawatts that you could send back and forth on that one line. And it was mainly used as an emergency. We had a plant trip, and I heard it when the phone call came in. The operator says, we're losing the unit. And I think it was a 135 megawatt unit. It tripped for some reason. Pump gave out or something. Anyway, the unit tripped off the line. So all of a sudden, you're 135 megawatts short of meeting the load. Well, what happens is that power comes in on the interconnecting tie lines. So what does he do? He gets on the hotline, which is a direct line to all the control centers of all the power plants in the system, and yells at him and says, give me all you got. So all the reserves plus any excess, everybody cranks up the governors. We tripped the line on outflow. We didn't not only make up for the 135 is lost, we sent 400 megawatts out and the line trips. And the system goes into an unstable frequency condition. And I remember sick man says, why did you do that? 135 megawatts is not a big deal. You didn't even have to go into an emergency. You've got a 200 megawatt margin. All you could do is pick up the phone and say, let's see, which is the next best plant? Pick up the load a little bit. Pick up the load a little bit. Or just leave it on automatic controls, and the automatic signals would have automatically raised those units in about 15 minutes. He says, well, I was afraid of the next unit tripping. Well, you aggravated the whole situation and almost created a major disturbance. But seeing that and the people not understanding the power system, how to run a power system, how do they work? What is the basic fundamental, the mathematics behind it? I mean, there's things, there's formulas that we have for that. I got used to it that I could walk around the control center, and I did this when I was a manager. I could go into the control center in 10 minutes time and make the tour of all the duty stations and look at the charts and recorders. I could tell you the state of the power system and what was running and whether they were doing it right or somebody was not paying attention to something in no time. I did that 2 or 3 times a day. I just walk through the control center, take a look at the charts and stuff, go by the operator's desk, see what kind of alarms he's getting, what he's doing. Keep up the good work, and leave. I didn't want to stay in there. I did not want to be there when they had an emergency because I would distract for them doing their job because they would look at me as the boss is here and they may do something that's not right. So just let them do that. Train them and let them do their job. And that's been the theory that I've had through the whole career is you train the people under you to do their job and you get out of the way.
One thing I've heard that a lot because there's a lot of podcasts I've been listening to, and this guy's been interviewing military veterans, and he's like, you sink to the, and in a crisis situation, you sink to the level of your training.
Yeah,
and
for
most people, they, a lot of people like to fantasize that they can rise to the occasion, but the reality is that you sink to your training.
Yeah, you sink to your training. Yeah, I saw it. I had one experience in the control center. One time we had the Public Service Commission commissioners. There were 5 commissioners, I think that's right, and we had 3 of them down for a tour of the control center. This is probably about a year or 2 after we put in the new control center. We had new computers and nice display board and all this stuff. Of course, most of my career was in the old plant where everything was. We used to tape the boards. The board that showing the transmission line was just a piece of red tape across the thing, and it was all integrated. In the new one, it was all electronically, and you had the lights that came on and flashed when the line tripped out and stuff. But anyway, we were giving a tour to these 3 public service commissioners that came in to see our control center. And I think it was a kind of a follow-up on the marketing system, because the marketing system was fairly new, and since I was one main instigator, they wanted to see what this was all about. Anyway, during that time, that tour, we had a system emergency. The St. Lucie Unit 1, at that time, was the only one we had on. St. Lucie Unit 1 had just tripped. It's an 800 megawatt unit, and at that time, we did not have the 500 kV lines complete. They were under construction, but they were not across the state line, so they weren't in service. They were being built. And so what happens is the way we set up the system is that we could import power or export power to a certain limit, and then over that we had special relays put in, we call it a special protection scheme, that would actually trip at a predetermined point and let the frequency drop. And then the frequency, we had frequency relays at a number of substations on selected feeders, that if the frequency got down to a certain point, it would trip the feeders, the load. And if it went further, more would trip, and more would trip. And then the frequency would come back, and as it came back up, as you were getting generation to replace it, if they came up and were stabilized above a certain frequency, then they would automatically close back and pick up the load. And I remember this one because I was watching the frequency chart, and all of a sudden, I see the line go across there, and we didn't put any loud ringing bells and klaxons in there, just a flashing light, red flashing light, an alarm, major alarm. And anyway, I gave the tour, and I was telling them all about all this stuff, and we went through it. And at the end of it, it's about an hour presentation to them. And I says, well, you just witnessed a major disturbance. We just lost this nuclear unit, and it's completely restored. It was restored in about 15 minutes. It tripped, and the reserves came in, and we went in under frequency trip load, and automatically put it back in less than 5 minutes. Most customers didn't even know it. The power went off. Okay, yeah, and 5 minutes later it comes back on. Okay, everything's normal. They didn't realize that the major nuclear unit, the largest nuclear unit in the state of Florida, just tripped offline. But anyway, I told the commissioners that, and they says, well, we didn't see it. What happened? And then I walked over to the recording and said, see that? That's the system frequency. It went down to 58 hertz and then came back to 60. And they says, wow. And people didn't get upset or anything. I said, nope, that's a training. That's the normal thing. So they expect that all the time. I expect them not to get upset or anything, just, okay, let's see, we need to do this to compensate for that. It's all done. It worked. And they were just shocked that it wasn't a major panic and people screaming at each other and stuff like that they would be used to.
Like
And I says, can't have that. You can't have that in a control center.
Yeah.
You just respond to your training. You know what to do when it comes back. The other thing we want to talk about is the power marketing and how that got started, and what we talked about a little of it. You doing okay?